I'd like to start out by doing a little bit of meditation. Well, let me introduce myself. We have how many people? 4, 5 people total on the, all right? Okay, so now you're muted, Shayla.
Sorry, we have 6 if you count Hayden's son, Andrew. He's in the background.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Andrew.
Hey, so yeah, I would like to let me just introduce myself, because you don't know who I am, and maybe you know a little bit about me. But anyway, just I took refuge with Lama Yeshe in 1978, the Kopan Monastery in Kathmandu. I was not interested in Buddhism at all, but when I took the November course at Kopan back that year, and then I'd actually lined up some work in Indian hospital. I'm a family doctor, physician, and so I had a job lined up at a hospital not too far from Pune, if anybody knows where that is. That's where Rajneesh was back in those days. And but anyway, when I decided to stay at Kopan, I canceled that job, and I had another job set up in Kenya that I later did complete. But I stayed at Kopan for 6 weeks, and I really went there because I was looking for some answers, and I thought, and I didn't know much about meditation at all, and I was raised Presbyterian, so I was trying to. I didn't have any expectation that I would become a Buddhist. In fact, I wrote in my little diary, "I will not become a Buddhist. I will not become a Buddhist." But it was interesting because the more Lama Zopa Rinpoche was explaining the Buddhist worldview, the more I thought, this is like exactly what I have intuited, but I could not put it into words. And not only that, but Buddhism made a lot of sense. I mean, there's a logical component to it, which appealed to me with a little bit of scientific background that I had. There was one monk there, interestingly, who had been a physician, who'd given up medicine to become a monk. It wasn't Dr. Nick. I met him later on, but this was another person. So anyway, I stayed at Kopan for 6 weeks, got interested in, and I ultimately took refuge with Lama Yeshe after taking 4-week November course with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and then came back to the States, and I finished my medical training, and then I took another year off in 1980. That was a 1-year vacation, you might say, and then another year off, and that was primarily to study Buddhism. I did go to Tibet on that trip for about 2 weeks, and that was kind of a cool thing to do. But basically, they had another Dharma celebration, and I went and participated in that, and that was great. I was, basically immersed in Buddhism for a better part of a year, and I did some practices that gave me even more conviction that Buddhism was a valid path for me, not for everybody, but for me. It was helping my mind. And then I took another year off. This time I went to worked at Delhi Hospital in Dharamsala, and I got some extra teachings there and got to do some retreats, and really a good opportunity. And my landlord, I mean, this is just fact. My landlord was the Dalai Lama's youngest brother. But that's why my kids got to meet the Dalai Lama, because I know Tenzin Chogyal pretty well, and he arranged the meeting with His Holiness for my kids in Washington, D.C. back in about 2011 or 12, something like that. So, and then when I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina back in 87, I started, I'd done this in Birmingham, Alabama, similarly. I started teaching sort of introductory classes and how to meditate through the Wake County Extension classes. And anyway, to make a short story long, people started becoming interested in Buddhist meditation. And then I would invite people that I'd met, like all these monks and nuns that some of them, Thupten Chodron, Rabina, I didn't know that at the time was such a great teacher, but I knew Rabina. I'd met Rabina back in 1980, but at that time she wasn't really teaching. But Kathleen McDonald and Thupten Pende and George Dreyfus, who was he was Sangye Sandup at the time, but he was the first Westerner. He was born in the Swiss-speaking part of Switzerland, but he was first Westerner to get the Geshe Larumpa degree, which is like a PhD in with honors, and so George was at that time he disrobed, and he had finished his PhD at the University of Virginia. He was at Williams. He was going to Williams College in Western Massachusetts, where he became a professor. So George came down and talked, and Jeffrey Hopkins came, and blah, blah, blah. I invited everybody I knew to come and teach to clear up a lot of the confusion that I'd created in the classes that I had done. But that was sort of the beginnings of what morphed into Kadampa Center, which is the Buddhist Center in Raleigh. And, I was, back in the early days, there weren't many people, but now, we have quite a few people. We don't you guys are like, your center is amazing to me. I'm just so, I rejoice in the work that they do, and the new facility, and how inspiring it is. And your spiritual director is also amazing. His energy in pulling all these classes off, I just cannot believe it. It takes a lot of effort and time. So I'm really happy to be part of this program. And I'm sorry about last week. I swear I thought he said 8:00, and it's 7. And so I know Venerable Rabina really well. From living, together, participating in these Dharma celebrations. And then she's been to Kadampa Center, I don't know how many times. And she usually stays with the center director now, Robbie Watkins. And Robbie's my business partner and very best friend. And so I always get to hang out with Rabina, and she always straightens me out, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to be with her, but she's no nonsense. She's very direct, and in that way, it's really good. Great teacher for a lot of people, and very inspiring. So, and again, I know that the title of this talk or tonight's session is supposed to be "How to Be Your Own Therapist." Have I got that right? Okay, so. So I think there's a lot of different ways that we could go off with this. I mean, I think as I was told, one of the reasons that that title was chosen is because you can literally teach anything, and in terms of the Dharma. And I think one of the most powerful teachings in all of Buddhism, are practical, or some of the mind training teachings that, like the 8 verses of mind training and things like that I'm sure some of you are familiar with. And so I thought we might spin off that a little bit. But let's start out with a with about, maybe 2 or 3 minutes of silent meditation where you can do whatever practice you're accustomed to. It could be 9-round breathing. I'm sure you know, in 3 times, out 3 times, in 3 times, out 3 times, and in both nostrils and out both nostrils 3 times. We'll start out with a couple of minutes of silent meditation, and then I'm gonna. Can you hear me, by the way? Can you raise your hand if you can hear me? Okay. Good. So then I'm going to lead a little bit of motivation, and then if we could at least do refuge and bodhicitta prayer, just to do at least that much, and then I'll give a short talk, and then we'll open it up to any questions that people have about this. So we'll start out with the breathing meditation first, and you're welcome to do any practice that you choose to. By the way, I have a new best friend. I was given to me by my ex-wife. We're good friends, and this is a little got him off the internet and off Amazon. And when he goes green, I breathe in, and then when he goes purple, I hold my breath. And then when he goes blue, I exhale. And it's like 4 seconds in, 7 seconds I hold my breath, and then 8 seconds I exhale through my mouth. So I've just been using him as kind of a fun way to settle in my mind before I practice. So you guys, I mean, if you want to see him, you're welcome to, but I suggest you do your own practice while I do mine here. So we'll go for a couple minutes, okay? So you can relax your concentration for a moment, and in a minute we'll do the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. But again, I always like to start out with a little some thoughts about bodhicitta, or the awakening mind, because as I'm sure all of you are aware, that the key factor in karma is our motivation, our attitude. Why are we doing this? Are we doing it just to get a little peace of mind now so we can make it through the day tomorrow? I mean, it's perfectly legitimate motivation. we're going through hard times. We need some peace. Nothing wrong with that. Some people have a more sort of magnanimous motivation, like just they actually have some faith in their potential to achieve nirvana or complete freedom from suffering. And so that's their motivation, is individual liberation. And again, a fantastic motivation. I mean, can you imagine being a person who has, who doesn't suffer and who has the realizations of selflessness, and they don't harm other people. They're a real blessing to this, to humanity, so to speak. But then as Mahayana Buddhist practitioners, we try to take it to the next level. And that's, we try to motivate as much as we can our practice. And again, it's not sentimentality, but it's actually cultivated through guided meditations. I'm not going to do it tonight, but maybe we'll do it another time. But there's a series of meditations that we can do, contemplations, to develop sort of genuine love and compassion for not just a few people, not those that are near and dear, but His Holiness calls it universal compassion. That's the kind of compassion that we need to have to develop this awakening mind, or bodhicitta, which is the most powerful, selfless attitude that we could have, to do any kind of spiritual practice. And so we think about, I know Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he often says, we've got to get to the point where, where we're thinking, by myself alone, I'm personally responsible for eliminating the suffering of universal living beings and guiding them to supreme enlightenment by myself alone. I can hear Rinpoche say that. And it's sort of like, are you kidding me? I mean, I'm a mess. I'm not that together. I can't guide people to some place that I've never been. And yet, this is the attitude. This is the attitude, the motivation of a spiritual warrior, a bodhisattva. Realizing that this is a huge endeavor, as much as we can. And again, based on a feeling of interconnectedness and universal love and compassion, we set our aim to achieve the perfection of our wisdom and compassion and kindness, skillful means and power, all the qualities that go into making a Buddha what a Buddha is. We have those potentials within us now. They just haven't been ripe. They haven't ripened, but we aspire to achieve supreme enlightenment in order to benefit others in the greatest possible way. And that's the attitude that we need to take into our spiritual practice. Every time we do practices, and if possible, throughout our day, 24/7, it would be amazing to never have that attitude of the awakening mind or bodhicitta ever not be something that we're conscious of. But at this point, we call it effortful bodhicitta. And at some point down the road, hopefully, not too far down the road, it'll be effortless. It'll be something that we actually have a realization of. But effortful bodhicitta is a good thing. Something that we, it's great that we even have. It's sort of amazing. We even have an attraction to that attitude and that we want to practice it. So that's something that we can rejoice in. So we're going to let that experience, whatever you generated, wash over you. And then before we do the refuge and bodhicitta prayer, Sheila, can you put that up when I get ready to do it? Can you flash? Is there any way to put that up on the screen? Yeah. That'd be good. I might have to use my glasses here. There you go. All right, so before we do that, you can see the first two lines have to do with making the distinction between a Buddhist and a non-Buddhist, right? Until I'm enlightened, I take refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Okay, so that would distinguish a Buddhist from a non-Buddhist. And the second two lines, by my merits of generosity and so forth, talking about the six perfections: generosity, ethics, patience, and concentration, wisdom, and so forth, and enthusiasm, all the six perfections. So that's what that's dealing with. The Bodhisattva six perfections. May I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. But that's distinguishing people who are practicing the Mahayana vehicle, the great vehicle, versus the individual vehicle, which we talk about as Theravada Buddhism, is more directed toward individual liberation, whereas Mahayana is directed toward the benefit, Buddhahood for the sake of all. But that's what those lines mean. But then, more importantly, I think it's important to understand that part, but more importantly, to understand like the three things that we need to reflect on before we do the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. The first one is Alex Berzin. I don't know if you know Alex, if you've used him there, but Alex lived in Dharamsala many years and was a translator for some of the great Tibetan lamas, even His Holiness translated for him. And Alex, I think he lives in Berlin now, but he's a fantastic teacher. And so anyway, Alex, he talks about the three motivations for taking refuge. The first is fear, and he doesn't like the word fear, but the scriptures usually say the fear of being reborn in the three lower realms, but that doesn't really resonate with most Westerners. So Alex likes the word dread, like the dread of living out our lives with a mind that's sort of out of control. And it is. I mean, we have most of us can't even count 10 breaths without getting distracted. And so we have to understand that our mind is out of control, and it's caused us a lot of suffering and will cause more in the future. And so we have some sincere, sort of heartfelt dread of living out our lives with this kind of mind when there's something better that's possible. There's something better that's possible. And that's a crucial part of this. We have to have some faith that we have the potential to do something more than just go through the motions of being who we've been up until now. So this, again, the first point is dread. And the second point is confidence. Confidence in the Buddhas, the enlightened beings, the Dharma, their realizations, and the Sangha, or the spiritual community. Sometimes we talk about the Arya Sangha, those that have had direct realization of emptiness. But we're also taking refuge in our own Buddha potential, or Buddha nature, our own potential to realize these teachings within our own mental continuum, and our own potential to become Sangha, or support for others' spiritual practice. So again, we go back to the first point before we say the refuge of bodhicitta prayer. We reflect on dread or fear. Again, the scriptures say of being reborn in the three lower realms, but most of us don't have much of experience. That doesn't, at least in my experience with Westerners, is not a strong motivation. But I'm understanding that my mind is out of control, and I could do something about it, and I dread living my life with that kind of mind is good enough. And then confidence in, I think what's really powerful is having faith in our own Buddha potential, our own Buddha nature. We have, we have confidence in our teachers, the external Buddha, but also our own Buddha potential. And we have confidence that our teachers have realizations, but confidence in our potential to have those realizations, and confidence in the Sangha and our potential to be that an inspiration and a guide and helpful to others. So those are and then the last is compassion for ourselves, compassion for others. These are the three motivations that we need to reflect on. Again, dread, confidence, and compassion before we do the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. Each time we need to take a second and think about what we're doing. We just don't want to be like, spouting off a bunch of canned prayers that don't really touch our heart. The whole point is it has to touch your heart. And if it doesn't, maybe there's something good happen, but not much. If it comes from the heart, it's very powerful. So as much as possible, we put our hands together. The left hand stands for wisdom, and the right for method. And we put the hands together and hold them at our heart. And we say these prayers. And there's a lot of visualizations and things like that, but we just make it simple. We'll do this 3 times together. And you can stay muted if you want. If you want to speak up, you can too, but I'm going to say it. I take refuge until I'm enlightened, in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by my merits of generosity and so forth. May I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened, in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened, in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and anger. I prostrate reverently with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actually arranged and mentally emanated. I confess all my negative actions and downfalls collected from beginningless time. I rejoice in the virtues of ordinary beings and Aryas. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for transmigratory beings. I dedicate my own and others' virtues to great enlightenment. Okay, so that's a good way to start. So I think when we talk about being our own therapist, and I don't have to. I guess I don't have to pull any punches tonight. In the sense that I'm talking to people that have some familiarity. Well, let me ask: is there anybody here who is new to the Dharma or new to Buddhism, or these teachings that we're getting, the things that I've been talking about, or has everybody been pretty familiar and maybe has taken refuge? Anybody? Raise your hand if you don't. If this is all brand new. Okay. So one person? All right. I can't see Barbara, but I guess I'm going to assume Barbara's familiar. So I'm going to talk a little bit about in generalities about Buddhism. I mean, the point of view of Buddhism or the Dharma, we use the word Dharma. Dharma is actually a Sanskrit word that means that which separates beings from suffering. Okay, When we talk about Buddha Dharma, we're talking about the actual teachings of the Buddha. And so, we understand also, we sort of coming, as Buddhists, we're coming from the point of view that that our mind is the source of our happiness and misery. That there's no way, no matter how much money, no matter, drug, sex, rock and roll, and you fill in the blanks. No matter how much stuff we have, the real source of happiness and peace is our mind. It has to come from our mind, our heart mind. We kind of use those terms interchangeably. Interestingly, in the West, when we talk about mind, we might hold our head, whereas Buddhists, when they talk about mind, they really point to their heart. So heart and mind sort of similar. And so so I'm going to talk in general terms, but it's really good to go back, and repetition's not a bad thing. I know you've heard these teachings before, many of you, but I'm going to say a few things about what the Buddha first taught, because again, these are everything the Buddha taught was meant to be an antidote to our delusions, to those states of mind that disturb our tranquility, our peace of mind, our happiness. And there apparently, sometimes you'll hear, well, there are 84,000 teachings, one for each of the delusions that we have. But the very first teachings that the Buddha, after he achieved enlightenment, he walked from, I don't know how many of you have been fortunate enough to go to Bodh Gaya, but he walked from Bodh Gaya to a place called Sarnath. Well, I've been to Bodh Gaya and I've been to Sarnath, and Sarnath's a long way from Bodh Gaya. But that's where he met some of his old buddies, and that's where he gave his first teachings called the Four Noble Truths. Four Noble Truths, or like sometimes called the Arya Truths. And the first thing that he taught about was that life is problematic. That basically he taught that all worldlings, which that would be us, all ordinary beings, were deluded. And that that's just, he said, we have problems. We suffer, and we suffer unnecessarily. And he talked about the different kinds of dukkha. The Sanskrit word is dukkha. I almost like the word dukkha better than suffering, because it's vast. But there were three principal kinds of dukkha that the Buddha talked about. And why is it important? I mean, a lot of people think, Buddhism is so negative. Why are they talking about suffering, suffering, suffering? But it's, we have to understand, and we have to be honest with ourselves. If our mind is a mess, and we're not willing to acknowledge that, then we won't actually seek a remedy. It's like, for example, if somebody this is a terrible example, but I'm in medicine. So like if somebody has like terrible chest pain, and it's radiating to their neck and down their left arm, and their heart's palpitating and they can't breathe, and they think, there's nothing wrong. I'm fine. It's just a muscle spasm or heartburn or whatever, acid reflux. But in fact, they're having a heart attack. But unless they come to terms with the reality of the situation, they will not have any incentive to find a solution. And in the same way, the Buddha taught the first things he taught were really the nature of our existence. And you can think, well, that's negative, but it's also when we look at it carefully, it's not really, it's pretty much irrefutable. This whole notion of dukkha, that we live with a mind that's pretty much out of control. And the Buddha talked about the dukkha of the obvious things, like being born and sickness and old age and death, all things that we all have to confront. And, some of us are living it right now. Some of us have a taste of it. We've all had tastes of sickness and so forth, but eventually, as they say, none of us are going to get out of here alive. We all have to face someday our own demise, and so being coming to terms with our reality, and as Lama Zopa said, the worst suffering of all is the suffering of the dissatisfied mind. Nobody is ever satisfied with what they have. We all want more. We want more. We have that. It's just how we're wired. It's terrible, but it's just how it is. We're never satisfied. And it's like low-level radiation. It's like always going on, always disturbing our tranquility. So he talked about the suffering of pain, obvious, and then he talked about the suffering of change. How we're all addicted to deliciousness. We're addicted to the pleasant things in life. We want pleasure. We want stuff. We want good reputation. We want people to say nice things about us, and we dread the opposites. We dread disgrace and blame and losing what we have and pain. And so we live our lives, literally clinging to the notion of everything that's we can imagine that would be positive and dreading everything that's negative. And the reality is that, well, we're going to have both, but it's all impermanent. Any pleasurable experience that we have will not last. That great meal or whatever it is, you fill in the blank, it won't last. It will come to an end and we'll want more. We're like people that are drinking salt water. We're never satisfied. And so the Buddha pointed that out as the second aspect of dukkha. And the third aspect is the first one, easy to see. Birth, sickness, old age, death, meeting leads to parting, high position, low position, all of those things. That's easy to see. Ordinary life, dukkha, easy to see. The second part, change, the suffering of change, we can see it, but we don't want to see it because that's where we spend our lives in pursuit of pleasure and these experiences that don't last. And we think we equate that with happiness, but it's not. It only gives us temporary respite from dukkha. And then the last one is really hard to see. And it's not something we even want to see. It's called pervasive suffering or pervasive dukkha. And it's the fact that we're caught in a cycle of uncontrolled causation. And we know it. We keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, and we don't get it. We don't get it. We get the same thing over and over again. It's called, in Buddhism, we call it samsara. And maybe you've had teachings on the 12 links of interdependent origination, but we all understand that, we try new things, we try this, but we end up doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same result, and we're never satisfied. And so this is the hardest one to recognize. And the Buddhists equated this type of suffering is like having a burn, like you burned your arm, and it hurts all the time. It hurts, but then you pour some tepid water over it, and you get some relief, and you go, "Boy, that feels so much better." But then as soon as you run out of water, boom, the pain comes back. So the ground of our being is dukkha, unless we find a solution for that. And that's the claim of Buddha Dharma, is that it's possible to stop our suffering. We have Buddha nature, we have Buddha potential, and we can actually develop those potentials for wisdom and compassion and power and skillful means. We have those potentials, little bits of them in us right now, and they can be cultivated through consciously practicing the Dharma. That is the claim. That's the claim of Buddha Dharma. So the first noble truth was dukkha, and then the Buddha said, okay, everybody's sick. All worldlings are deranged. Everybody's sick with dukkha. But hey, there's a cause for it. And it's delusions and karma. And the principal delusions are greed and hatred and ignorance and pride and jealousy. And there's 84,000 more. But they're deluded states of mind. We call them, the Sanskrit word is klesha, but doesn't mean anything. But they're delusions. They're mistaken perceptions, and it's these delusions and karma that cause the first noble truth, which is suffering. So actions that are motivated by greed, hatred, ignorance, pride, and jealousy always cause suffering. They always cause suffering. And so we have to, according to the laws of karma, and again, karma takes a little bit of faith. We all, everybody kind of says, well, it's no big deal. What goes around comes around. But it's much deeper than that. Karma is a very profound teaching, and it's something that the Dalai Lama even said, if you had to give up teachings in Buddhism, he said, if you had to throw out, this sounds crazy, but he said, if you had two teachings that you could keep one and let the other one go, he said the first one would be karma, and the second would be the teachings on emptiness, or the wisdom of reality. He said, stick with karma. He said, it's so important. We have to understand that our actions all have consequences. He said, for example, again, very quickly, the teachings on karma, there are 4 laws. The first one is pretty obvious. Actions motivated by self-cherishing, okay? Any action motivated by greed, hatred, or ignorance will always lead to suffering. The karmic seeds planted by that attitude of mind will always cause future problems, either in this life or some future lifetime. And any action motivated by non-attachment, non-hatred, and non-ignorance will always lead to happiness, always. So we think of it in very general terms. Positive leads to happiness, and negative actions lead to suffering. Negative actions are those actions that disturb not only our tranquility, but they cause future suffering. Okay, so that's one law of karma. The second law is that karma is expandable. That just tiny actions, a little like for example, you see an acorn becomes an oak tree, right? A little tiny acorn that weighs almost nothing become like a 20,000 pound oak tree given the time. And karma is the same way. Tiny actions of body, speech, and mind. When everything's motivated by mind, tiny actions can have huge results. Most of our actions, 24/7, are motivated by self-cherishing selfishness, which is not our friend. It causes suffering. So we have to recognize this. And we have to understand that karma is expandable. So any opportunity we have to practice virtue, we want to plant those seeds, again, with a positive motivation. And any time that we catch ourselves doing something that's non-virtuous, we need to clean that up right away. All right. So because karma can expand into big problems or huge beneficial things down the road. So again, karma is definite. Karma is expandable. The third law is that anything that we experience is a result of our former actions. This is the Buddha taught this. Again, I'm not making this up. He said, whatever we have today is the result of our former actions. Maybe not just in this lifetime. And, Buddhism posits past lifetimes. So the things that we have today, maybe we don't like what we have. Maybe we have cancer. Maybe some bad situations have happened to us in this lifetime. And we go, well, I didn't do anything to deserve this. But according to the laws of karma, we're accountable. We are ultimately responsible for our reality. There's never a time. This sounds a little harsh, by the way, but I've been called out on this many times. But I just have to say it, that that all of our, whatever we experience or have experienced in our life is the fruition of former actions planted on our mental continuum. Maybe not by the you of this life, but the you of some former lifetime, the nominal you. Okay? So your mental continuum, all of our mental continuums have been around from the beginning of beginningless time. Seeds have been planted, and now, boom, we have this experience called this very moment. And so, for example, the fact that I'm sitting here and you're there, and we're talking about the Dharma, this is not an accident. This is the fruition of some former karmic fruit that was a seed that was planted in our mind stream, literally forcing us to have the experience that we're having at this moment. Karma's ripening. So we cannot experience the result without creating the cause. We cannot experience a result without creating the cause. That's another way of saying that we're not victims. And it's also another way of saying that, hey, we have control over our future. We can, as Lama Zopa says, we can shape our mind like we can mold clay by practicing virtue, by developing these positive states of mind and eliminating the negative mind states, purifying negative karma. We can have it all. And so it's a very powerful notion just to entertain that notion of responsibility and that everything is the fruit of our own former actions. And then the last is that karma is never lost. The karmic seeds that were planted in this lifetime today, earlier in this life, in past lifetimes, they're never lost except until they can, there's some caveats to it. Number one is we're using karma at this moment, right? Karma is ripening for us to have the experience that we're having of ourselves and of these teachings at this moment. But we can destroy positive karma by anger, and we can purify negative karma by practicing purification practices. In Buddhism, we have many. I'm sure those of you who are more experienced are aware of the four opponent powers. But the key one is recognizing that the key powers to keep bringing to mind are that when we act and behave in ways and think in ways that are harmful to ourselves and others, we recognize it, we acknowledge it, we regret it. Then there are practices that we can do to actually, we call it the remedy, the power of the remedy. And then the most important aspect of purification practice to help clean up this karmic garbage dump that we have is the resolve, the power of the resolve, that we promise as much as possible to not do that action again for some period of time. It could be a minute, could be an hour, could be a day, could be as much as possible for the rest of our lives. So karma can be destroyed. Positive karma can be destroyed by anger. Negative karma can be destroyed by purification practices. So again, this is a key point that the Buddha talked about. So, so the first noble truth is dukkha, that we're sick. The second noble truth is that we have an illness, that there's a cause to this illness, and it's delusions. The principal ones are greed, hatred, ignorance, pride, and jealousy, but there are many more, and karma, the actions that are motivated by these delusions that plant seeds on the mind stream that ripen suffering. And then the third thing the Buddha taught, which is fantastic, which is amazing, and nobody else, no other system that I'm aware of posits this. The Buddha said, hey, guess what? We don't have to suffer. We have Buddha nature. We can purify our delusions. We can plant the seeds for supreme happiness. Nirvana, actually, to be completely free of suffering. So the Buddha said, you're sick. There's a cause for the sickness, which is karma and delusion, and it can be cured. Not just, and most of us are happy to just diminish our suffering a little bit, but the Buddha's positing that, hey, we can actually achieve nirvana, complete freedom from suffering, and even full enlightenment. So that's the third noble truth. And the fourth one was then here's the path. He said, here's how you do it. He said, here's how you do it. And you do it by practicing the path. And sometimes it's packaged different ways. And you know, we talk about ethics, concentration and wisdom. And sometimes we talk about the lower scope, the middle scope, and the higher scope. And then I particularly like the renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. Okay, these are the different ways that it's packaged. But renunciation is basically having compassion for yourself, for us having compassion for ourselves, recognizing the predicament we're in, and having the determination to be free of suffering. But that is having compassion for yourself, determining that's renunciation, the determination to be free. And then bodhicitta is the second of the three principal aspects of the path. This is what we talked about earlier, this altruistic intention to achieve full enlightenment. Again, sounds so amazing, so far beyond what I could even imagine I could ever do. But it's my aspiration to achieve it. That's the key point here. I aspire for supreme enlightenment in order to benefit and alleviate the suffering of universal living beings. What an incredible attitude or a point of view to be coming from that as sincerely as possible. So that's the second of the three principal aspects. And the third has to do with, it's called emptiness. And emptiness is we call it the wisdom of emptiness. And basically, it's just saying that we have, Lama Yeshe used to talk about it in very sort of simplistic terms. It's like, he said, it's sort of like emptiness is like recognizing that we have painted over reality with our delusions and doing a glorified paint stripping job. We strip away our projections of inherent existence, of true, independent, inherent, existing in and of itself, hardwired existence, not only of ourselves. We think we really exist. We do exist, of course we do, but not the way we perceive ourselves to exist. You know, my body is sitting, my mind is thinking, where is the I? And when I start looking for that I never find it. I never find it. What I find is a body and mind that work interdependently, and I have a nominal existence called I, and that's all, and that's enough. But we project a false sense of I, and we cling to it, and we hold it as most sacred, and it's the source of self-cherishing selfishness, which is our biggest enemy. Looks like a friend, but it's not. Okay, so those are the three principal aspects of the path, and then to become enlightened, we have to practice both generation and completion stage of Tantra, which is the esoteric teachings of the Buddha, which are a little bit beyond the scope of what I need to be talking about anyway. Not that I could say much that was helpful, but I know a little bit about it, but not much. But that's kind of, if we're talking about how to be your own therapist, we have to understand our mind. And we have to understand how it works and the human condition, and then we can go from there. It's a good starting point. So, all right, I've talked too much. So let's take about 10 minutes. Sorry, we could go on as long as people want to. I'm happy to. But any comments? I'm really interested to know if somebody has something a question they want to ask or something they want to add. This is the time to do it. By the way, I watched Rubina, and she said, "Come on, people, come on, y'all can do this. Help me here." Bound to have some questions or comments. Either way. Now, let's see, Janice, you said you were a newbie, right?
I am. I'm in Raleigh, by the way.
Are you really?
I am.
Do you go? Do you come to Kadampa Center?
I haven't been there yet, but it is my intention to go next Sunday.
Really? Well,
Absolutely.
well, I'm actually teaching next Sunday, so I'll
Oh,
see you
good.
there.
All right, great. Thank you.
And we're doing actually we're actually doing the Kensho Rinpoche gave some he's a monk, he's our Geshe's guru. He gave some teachings on the 8 verses of mind training, which we'll be talking about a little bit in this class too. And so yeah, I'll see you next Sunday.
All right.
Great.
I'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any of you experienced Dharma people I know? Shayla, you have to ask one question or make a comment. Give us some of your Dharma wisdom here.
The one thing that we all agree on is anger is an issue that's hard to overcome and to pull ourselves back from. So that's always something that, yeah, anger is just our nemesis.
Yeah. It's interesting you would bring, because I actually today I was leading our Geshe's on vacation, so they asked me to lead the discussions today for about 3 or 4 weeks on Sunday mornings. This morning we talked a lot about anger, and so it's kind of fresh on my mind. And a lot of people have issues with anger, and self-righteous anger actually is like somehow we have this notion that, well, there's for example, if there's injustices in the world, like anger is justified in some ways. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, we should be outraged by some of the things that are happening and the way certain people or certain groups of people are being treated. And it's outrageous. And it does cause anger to rise in the mind. And but His Holiness is, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, he said some interesting things about anger, because it comes up all the time. Well, I'll just back up for a second. There was a few years ago in the psychotherapeutic world where there was a lot of emphasis on, getting it out. When you're angry, you should express it. You should get it out. Just say what's on your mind. Just emote and get it out there. And then as years have gone by, the psychotherapy community has began to realize that that's not such a good idea. Creates a lot of problems for ourselves. There are health issues even. A lot of people die in a fit of, heart attacks can happen while we're having a fit of anger. It causes a lot of problems for ourselves and other people in relationships in general. As His Holiness, he said, he said, there might be a situation where anger would be helpful, but I cannot think of it right now. But he did say something that was very helpful to me. He said, when we're angry, and what is anger anyway? I mean, if I were yelling right now at you, would you say, well, he's angry, right? You'd say that, wouldn't you? But I might not be angry. I might actually be motivated by compassion. For example, if you have a child and the child runs out on the road 15 times, and you tell them to stop running out in the road and they don't do it, and you go, well, gosh, I don't know what to do. I guess I just got to give them a good pop. And then they stop, and your motivation was compassion. The action looked harsh. It looked fierce. It looked wrathful, but the motivation was compassion. So His Holiness said that when we're angry, the best parts of our mind, which are the most beneficial, best parts of our mind, which are compassion and wisdom, and our ability to know the appropriate thing to do in any situation to resolve conflict, and the power, our personal power, they're all undermined by anger. They can't function when the mind is pervaded by anger. And so ordinarily we say, oh, well, anger protects me. It alerts me to injustices and stuff like that. And the Buddhist perspective is that anger, this wish to harm others, and this wish to harm others, is not helpful for the mind. It disturbs our tranquility. It disturbs others' tranquility, and we can accomplish the same thing with compassion and wisdom. Get what I'm saying? We can, motivated by compassion and wisdom, we can be fierce, and we need to be fierce sometimes. We need to take a strong stand when there are things that are unjust, that are happening around us, or to us even, maybe. And but the motivation does not have to be anger, this sort of constricted, narrow, really poisonous mind. You can feel it in your heart. Like when we're angry, our heart almost seems to close down. And there are ways to resolve, again, injustices and things that need to stop. There are ways to stop them without losing our tranquility and our peace of mind, but actually be motivated by wisdom and compassion. Compassion alone is not enough. It has to be enhanced by wisdom. Okay? They call it idiot compassion. Compassion without wisdom is called idiot compassion, because we don't know we can make a lot of mistakes if we don't have the wisdom to conjoin with compassion. So it's a great question, because we all deal with it every day. We all find little annoying situations and such. It's just, it can be as little as the mind of aversion, all the way up to being completely outraged about something. They're all anger wearing different clothes, right? They're all the same state of mind, but one's more embellished than the other. Anything else? Any other comments about anger? Because that's a hot subject. Now, I can't pronounce your name, but you unmuted there for just a second.
Hi, Dr. Brown. It's Hian.
How do you say your name?
Hian.
Oh, hey.
Hi. Oh, thank you so much. I don't have a comment, but I am just so grateful that I joining you today and listen to you. I have some health issue, and my son have some challenges in his life. And it's just so wonderful to hear you today. And I'm just so thankful.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a real honor. It's a real honor to be asked to talk about the Dharma. And, I think I know from my side, I always learn more. When I have to talk about it and try to, be a little bit of a teacher. It's really good for my mind too. So it's a win-win. I'm glad. Thank you. I'm glad that you found something useful. So I've run over. That's pretty typical for me. So we're going to do this again next week, right? We've got 2 more classes after this on Sundays. We'll go from 7 to 8. And if you have any, honestly, I think it's really good to bring your personal struggles to the degree that you're willing to do that. I think generally speaking, people are willing to be confidential, and we don't want any HIPAA violations, right? So, but being confident, being sharing whatever your struggles are, I think we can all be counted on to not to be confidential about that. So anyway, you have a great week. Now we always have to do one more thing before we wrap it up, and that's, we do something called a dedication, and we have some prayers we can do Do you have that little Shanti Deva prayer, or which ones do you want to do? All right, yeah, this is good. We'll do a dedication. A dedication, it's a weird term, dedication, but basically what's happened here in the last hour or so is that we come here, and as much as we've been able to, we've tried to develop a proper motivation for practice, and we've listened and engaged in these teachings, and seeds have definitely been planted. Seeds, and I'm going to say that we all have planted the seeds of virtue in our mind that will definitely ripen in future happiness. So dedication is a way of acknowledging that we've done something virtuous, we've done something positive, and we want those seeds to ripen, not just in a new Tesla. You know, everybody wants a Tesla, right? Well, we want our virtue to ripen in us achieving supreme enlightenment for the sake of others. So we do this dedication prayer with that in mind. So think about that. So may all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests, and may all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So, amen. And thank you for your being present tonight. I know that there are other places and things that you could do, and I rejoice in all of our efforts, whatever effort it took to be here and to listen and pay attention, and let's put these teachings into practice immediately, tomorrow or tonight, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.